On a scale of 1 to 10, what's your favorite color of the alphabet, true or false? I think the answer you're looking for is updog. Hi everyone, it's Juliette Sébastien. I am the Rubik's Cube French record holder and one-handed runner-up world champion. In this video, I'll be answering some questions from social media. So first of all, I feel like I have to address Phil's troll question. How do you determine how long to microwave food for? So I'm no microwave expert, but when I was 12, my parents told me to set the microwave on 800 watts and to leave the plate in for a minute and a half. So that's what I do. And if it's not enough, you can just add 30 seconds or 1 minute. And sometimes on the food package, you'll get specific instructions about how long you should microwave for. Do you think it's possible to be world class in OH using the ring finger for our moves instead of using the pinky? So it is theoretically possible. There is one cuber from China called Zhang Zaiyang who has a lot of mid-9 averages on YouTube with incredible turning, and he uses his ring finger for both R and R prime moves. However, it's not very common, and that's for a reason. And that's because when you grip the cube, you will need your ring finger at the back. Otherwise, your grip will be very unstable, maybe unless you have very large hands. I would say do it at your own risks, because there's a French cuber who was the absolute best at OH. He was using this finger trick for both R and R prime moves, and at some point he was basically forced to stop practicing altogether. He was experiencing pretty bad finger pain, so that's why I mostly recommend using your pinky for R moves. Is full ZBL, including Sun and anti-Sun sets, really worth learning, and how beneficial are they to your times? So a lot of people asked about this, and yes, I think they are. So for one-handed, there's no debate that if you want to be competitive, I think you should learn all the sets, including Sun and anti-Sun. And for two-handed, there might be a bit more room for debate because of how fast Sun and anti-Sun algs are. But in my opinion, Sun and anti-Sun are very good sets, meaning that a lot of the algs are very nice and they're also quite easy to recognize as opposed to like H or Pi sets. Yeah, for both events, the answer is yes. How fast do you think you would be without ZBL one-handed? So I did an average of 100 earlier to have an idea. It's actually not as bad as I thought. I was averaging 10.5 with a best average of 50 of 10.3. Whereas if I use ZBL, I average basically 10 flats. And I think one of the reasons why there was such a small difference is that sometimes I go out of my way to orient edges and it's not always very efficient. And if I don't do that, in some solves, doing a standard C-flop solution would be faster. But then if I learn ZBLs, it won't really be an argument anymore. So I definitely recommend ZBL for OH. And I think you should learn them too. It will make you faster. How long did ZBL take you, and what are the best resources to learn good algs and train them well? ZBL took me about 7 years in total because I started in late 2016, early 2017. But it should definitely not take you that long. That was mostly because a lot of people were questioning the utility, so I doubted myself a lot. And yeah, I took a lot of breaks, and also the algs were very scattered and not very optimized, so I had to look at different sources. But luckily you don't have to do that anymore because I actually made a document with all of the algs I know and use. So I will be posting that in the description so you can take a look. And as for trainers, I recommend Roman Strakhov's bestsiteever.ru. It has many features and it's very easy to use. TheCubicle also has a website that has a lot of features, but it's not as intuitive, so I personally use Romans. Now with the ZBL questions out of the way, let's move on to the important stuff. So who's your favorite plushie? I have a total of 54 plushies, but I don't really have a favorite. No, that's not true. I don't have a favorite. I mean, for real. What is a good way to practice OH? How long should a solving session be, and how should you split it, like practicing AUX, solves, etc.? I would say there's no one good way to practice, and like every bit of practice you do matters. I personally do a lot of solves, but I always take 20 minutes at the beginning of a session to warm up. And for me, what that looks like is I recap the ZBL AUX that I find difficult. And I also like to practice solving without the table because my style involves a lot of table use. And practicing without the table has a lot of benefits for your turning. But I would say for OH, you definitely need to dedicate a lot of time to AUG learning, including ZBL and also OH specific AUGs. So I would also include that in your practice if you need. What were your expectations going into Worlds 2023? How did you celebrate your podium? And what are your future plans for OH? So first of all, I didn't have many expectations going into Worlds 2023. I did podium in 2019, but the face of OH solving has changed a lot in 4 years, and I knew very well that I was not one of the favorites. And I did have a goal, which was to make top 6, because I had a bet with my friends that if I did not make top 6, I would have to start switching to Roux. But when finals came around, I wasn't really thinking about this because I was already very proud of having come third in semis. Podiuming was definitely a big surprise. Like, even after I got my average, I wasn't even sure that would be enough for podium. And so I celebrated by having a very nice Korean dinner with my friends and one of the best vacations of all time with my boyfriend in Korea and Singapore. Right now, I'm mostly trying to do as many solves as possible to maximize my turning speed. And in the coming month, I will also try to learn DBLS. So I hope I will be able to be sub 10 global and reach sub 9 officially. Hi Juliette, you're one of my favorite cubers, at least top 5. Thank you. My question for you is, what was your hardest cubing barrier to break? Why and how did you break it? Mental barriers are something I still very much struggle with, and it's one of the mental aspects of speed cubing that I have yet to master. My biggest one was probably beating my 7.18 PR average that I got in 2019 because I tied it 3 times. Then 3 years later, I improved it by 0.01, but at this point, all I wanted was to get sub 7. And the way I pushed through was basically by getting a very bad counting time after 3 solves. So sub 7 wasn't really on my mind anymore. And I somehow managed to count a 5.6 and a 6.3, so the overall average was sub 7. I would say that sometimes for breaking certain barriers, you need to have some external help, like skips, for example, and that your focus should be more on making sure you have occasions to reach your goal, and then being able to push through in the last 2 solves just comes with experience. So you can already celebrate whenever you have an occasion. Croissant or baguettes or waffles or pancakes? Definitely pancakes, but I will give extra points to croissant and baguette for the creative spelling. What do you eat to be fast? Orange juice, crepes, and Japanese food. What's your recipe for making excellent crepes? So my recipe is very simple. It may not be the best, but it works. All you need is 500 grams of flour, 1 liter of milk, and 5 eggs. You can also multiply the proportions. Typically, I often double or triple it. And so you put all of those in a bowl with some cooking oil, salt, and you can also add vanilla sugar if you know you're only gonna eat sweet crepes. And then I just whip everything, and I use blender at the end to eliminate lumps. And so after you have made your crepes dough, you can let it stand for a few hours, and then you just pour dough in a pan. Why do you study Chinese? How long have you been learning Chinese? 中文一共学了7年了，起初是我的父母让我上中文课，但是然后我发现学习中文非常有意思，所以现在我继续努力学习中文，来成为一名口译员。What was your reaction upon hearing that a kindergartner had beaten your FWR? so female world record. So this person is referring to Cao Qixian, who is 5-year-old speedtuber from China, who recently got a 5.97 average, which is very impressive. So when I found out about it, I wasn't too surprised because I knew that something like this was bound to happen. And yeah, overall, I think she deserves it, and what she did was very impressive. And it's also nice to see the ZB method used at a very high level like this. But I'm definitely looking forward to surpassing her in the future. What do you do other than cubing, like hobbies or work? So I don't have a job yet. I am still studying, and next year I will apply for a master's to become a conference interpreter. So I spend quite some time studying foreign languages and also learning other languages for fun, such as Spanish and Italian. And I also have some hobbies that I were very intense before I started cubing, and I sort of maintained them. So it mostly includes reading manga, watching anime, and drawing. And since lockdown, I've been getting into running, so I decided that I would run once a week. So that's what I'm doing now. And I run about 10 to 15 kilometers every time on average. Who is your favorite YouTuber for watching cubing content? I don't really watch YouTube that much, so when I watch YouTube, it's mostly to see people's solves and videos that my friends make. There is one channel that I really like. It's a French channel, but they have video in English that is very cool. The name of the channel is Zippo, and I recommend also adding Yu Nakajima to your search. He doesn't have a lot of subscribers, so you probably need to do that for his name to show up. And they have a very cool music video, so yeah, I recommend you check it out. Question related to autism, if she feels comfortable answering. How do you handle overstimulation in comps, and how does that affect you during and after? So most of you probably don't know that I'm autistic. A lot of us in the cubing community are on the spectrum or otherwise neurodivergent, so I think it's important sometimes to speak up about it. I was diagnosed with autism 5 years ago, and it explained a lot of things I had been dealing with. So one thing is I am hypersensitive to certain sensory stimuli, like sounds, and so I easily get overwhelmed in crowded and loud environments, like at competitions. Another thing is, even though cubing makes it easy to connect with others around a common area of interest, social interactions are still very taxing. So competitions are obviously tiring for everyone, but I feel like for autistic people, it probably reaches yet another level. Usually I manage to push through when it's local comp and 1 or 2 days, provided I get enough sleep during the event and enough rest before and after. But for bigger and longer events, it's more challenging. For example, at Euros last year, I didn't do very well, and one of the reasons was I got overstimulated on Saturday night during the Nation Cup, and I didn't really have anyone to support me with it at the time. But since then, my close friends have been more aware, so it definitely helped. And also, I've been taking more regular breaks during the comp between events. So typically, I would just go for a walk with my boyfriend. And then sometimes we also play volleyball with plushies, which is very fun. And this way I get fresh air and exercise, which is very good. I also use 2 different types of headphones to block out sound when I'm competing or traveling. And whenever I need, I take a day off uni or work to recover. Despite my difficulties, cubing competitions are probably one of the best things that happened to my life, so it's definitely worth the effort. Worst and best competition. So my worst competition is probably my first one, because I was too socially anxious to talk to anyone, so it wasn't very fun and it left me a bit demoralized. But then before my next comp a year later, I became more active on forums, and the people I met online made it more easy for me to fit in. So it was a completely different experience, and that's when I understood that competitions were as great as people online said they were. And so my favorite comp, I would typically say that it's Worlds 2023 or 2019, but all things considered, it might be Norwegian Championships 2022. So it was a very chill and convivial comp a week after Euros, where a lot of internationals ended up going. There were a lot of fun moments besides the competing part that made it feel a lot more like a local comp. And what made it very special for me is that it was the scene where my boyfriend and I realized we were both in love and started our relationship. Have you tried Rue for OH? How does it compare in your opinion? I did try Rue back in 2019 because at Worlds I spent a lot of time hanging out with Rue users and they ended up teaching me the method. And so I practiced until I averaged about 16 seconds. So I wouldn't say it was enough for me to assess the viability of the method, but it's definitely proven to be very effective, and probably more so than CFOP. So I will definitely keep an eye out, but I think that with the help of the ZB method, I can still be competitive. Hoya or Yo? I personally use Hoya because that's the way I learned 4x4. Yo is definitely more widespread among top cubers, and I think one of the reasons for this is that Hoya came after and didn't really bring anything new to the table. So top cubers sort of continued using Yo. But I think both methods are very viable. Yeah, they're probably equally as good, and I really enjoy solving with Hoya, so I will continue. What are your main speed cubes for every event? So for 3x3, I use the Tornado V3 flagship that I set up with Angstrom loops. And then my settings are 3 and 3 for the tensions, and for magnets it's the second strongest setting. For OH, I recently switched to the R3MV5, and then for the other event I compete in, so 2x2 GAN 251 M Pro, 4x4 Angstrom also WRM, and for Megaminx I use the YJ Yuhu V2 Angstrom. As a female cuber, what types of challenges do you have to face? So being the only woman in competition environments doesn't affect me that much because I've pretty much always been the only girl in my friend group when I was little, and also in the activities I was taking part in. So it's not that much of a change for me. But I would say one thing is that I get a lot more attention as one of the few women at comps, and I don't always feel legitimate for it because I don't know whether people recognize me for my achievements or because I'm one of the few competitive females. So I struggle a bit with all the attention I'm getting and like with feelings of not being legitimate. But I would say otherwise, the cubing community is nice enough that I get very few inappropriate comments or interactions. So yeah, that's very good. How are you always present when Timon gets a sub 4-second single? I think it's because of my presence. I have a very strong presence, and so it boosts Timon performance. Timon himself says that I am OP, and I think for this reason he should hire me to go to comp with him. How got fast? Because Ben Majin once said, believe in yourself, you can be anything that you want to be. That's it for the Q&A. Thank you so much for all your questions. A lot of them were very interesting. I wish I could have answered more, but I had to make a selection. Yeah, thanks for watching.